You ever know a woman by the name of Mary B. Cuddy?
No, sir.
Most Westerns lied about the frontier. They showed clean gunfights, noble cowboys, and adventures where heroes always survived. But the real West was disease, starvation, madness, and death that came slow and ugly. These are the only 10 Westerns that truly show how brutal the frontier actually was. Number 10, Meek's Cutoff. 2010.
Days shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground.
Kelly Reichardt made a Western about dying of thirst in the desert, and it's one of the most honest depictions of wagon train life ever filmed. Meek's Cutoff follows 3 families crossing the Oregon desert in 1845, guided by a mountain man who's probably lost. Nothing happens. That's the point. They walk, they're thirsty, they argue about whether to trust their guide, and they keep walking. The film runs nearly 2 hours and feels longer because Reichardt refuses to provide drama or resolution. This is what wagon trains actually experienced: endless days of uncertainty, deprivation, and fear. The film is shot in a boxy aspect ratio that limits what you can see, mimicking the blinders and bonnets the women wore. You can't see the horizon or what's coming. You're trapped in the immediate moment, just like the settlers. Michelle Williams plays one of the wives, and her performance is all quiet desperation and exhaustion. These people are slowly dying, and they know it. They're running out of water, their oxen are collapsing, and their guide might be leading them in circles. What makes Meek's Cutoff so brutal is the complete absence of heroism or adventure. Nobody shoots Indians or discovers gold, or has a dramatic confrontation. They just walk through an endless desert, ration water, and try not to panic. When they capture a Kaya's man, they debate whether to trust him to lead them to water or kill him as a precaution. The film doesn't resolve this. It just ends with them still walking, still uncertain, still probably doomed. Reichardt researched wagon train diaries and based everything on documented experiences. The constant thirst, the suspicion of guides who got paid regardless of whether settlers survived, the impossible decisions about whether to trust native guides or continue with incompetent white men. The film shows that most frontier deaths weren't from gunfights or Indian attacks. They were from dehydration, starvation, and bad decisions made by exhausted people with no good options. The film bombed, making less than $1 million. Audiences expecting a Western got something closer to an endurance test. Critics praised it, but even positive reviews acknowledged it was deliberately boring. That boredom is historically accurate. Wagon train life was monotonous terror, punctuated by brief moments of crisis. Reichardt captures that perfectly, showing the frontier as a place where people died slowly from exposure, thirst, and the realization they had made a terrible mistake leaving civilization. There are no gunfights, no villains, just the desert and the certainty that most of these people won't make it to Oregon. Number 9, The Revenant, 2015.
I started scouting location this film 5 years ago. So in a way, I have a picture of
Iñárritu made a survival film that shows exactly what staying alive on the frontier actually required. The Revenant follows Hugh Glass after he's mauled by a grizzly bear and left for dead by his companions in 1823. What follows is 2.5 hours of brutal, unglamorous survival, where Glass crawls through snow with infected wounds, eats raw bison, sleeps inside a dead horse, and drags himself hundreds of miles driven purely by revenge. This isn't an adventure. This is documentary-level realism about frontier survival. The bear attack is one of the most realistic violence sequences ever filmed. It runs nearly 10 minutes and shows exactly what happens when an 800-pound animal mauls a human. The bear doesn't just swipe at Glass and run away. It throws him around, bites his throat, breaks his bones, and comes back multiple times. Leonardo DiCaprio's performance is almost entirely physical, grunting and gasping as Glass tries to survive injuries that should have killed him. The scene caused walkouts at screenings because it's so visceral and relentless. But the bear attack is just the beginning. The rest of the film shows what recovery looks like without medical care. Glass cauterizes wounds with gunpowder. He sets his own broken leg. He wraps himself in animal hides and crawls through snow because he can't walk. He falls off a cliff and somehow survives. Every scene is designed to show how miraculous his survival was, because everything was trying to kill him: weather, animals, infection, hunger, other men. Iñárritu shot the film using only natural light, which meant the schedule was dictated by weather and sun position. The production moved from Canada to Argentina, chasing winter conditions. The cast and crew endured brutal cold, and that suffering is visible in every frame. DiCaprio nearly got hypothermia multiple times. The commitment to authenticity meant everything looks and feels real, from breath vapor and cold air to the way snow crunches under feet. What makes The Revenant brutal isn't just the violence. It's the relentless depiction of how hard simply surviving was on the frontier. Glass has to hunt, build shelter, avoid hostile tribes, cross freezing rivers, all while barely able to move. The film shows that frontier life meant constant physical suffering and the ever-present possibility of death from 1,000 different causes. Glass survives through sheer willpower, but the film makes clear this was exceptional. Most people in his situation would have died in days. The frontier killed almost everyone who wasn't extraordinarily tough, skilled, and lucky. The Revenant doesn't romanticize any of it. Number 8. Bone Tomahawk, 2015.
I put some provisions in your squirrel bag. Lots of things with food energy, like...
This is Sheriff Franklin Hunt. Identify yourself right now, or I'll shoot you dead.
S. Craig Zahler made a Western that became a horror film, and in doing so, showed what frontier life meant when you encountered something genuinely hostile. Bone Tomahawk follows a rescue party tracking cannibals who've kidnapped people from a small town. The first 2/3 is a slow burn Western about the difficulty of traveling through hostile territory. Then they reach the cannibal cave, and the film reveals what the frontier was for people who encountered tribes that had completely rejected civilization and humanity itself. The film's most notorious scene involves a man being split vertically in half while alive, from groin to head. The cannibals strip him, hang him upside down, and use a tomahawk to split him down the middle. It's one of the most graphically violent sequences in any Western, and Zahler doesn't cut away. The practical effects are sickeningly realistic. But this scene isn't gratuitous. It's showing what happened to some frontier settlers who encountered tribes that saw them as food rather than humans to negotiate with. What makes Bone Tomahawk historically relevant is how it depicts the terror of traveling through territory where help was impossible. The rescue party is Kurt Russell, Patrick Wilson, Matthew Fox, and Richard Jenkins, and they're all excellent. The dialogue is naturalistic, showing how frontier people actually talked. The journey takes days, and every night could be their last. When Wilson's character's leg gets infected, there's serious discussion about amputation without anesthesia. These were real frontier concerns that most Westerns ignore. The film also shows class divisions in frontier towns. Some people have resources and education. Others are barely surviving. The town drunk is recruited because he's expendable. The deputy is included because the sheriff is too old for the journey. These practical, cruel calculations were how frontier justice actually worked. Lives had different values based on social position and usefulness. The film doesn't moralize about this. It simply shows it as accepted reality. Zahler researched accounts of frontier cannibalism, which did occur, though rarely. Some tribes practiced ritual cannibalism. Some settlers resorted to it during starvation. The film's cannibals aren't meant to represent any real tribe, but rather the nightmare scenario that haunted frontier settlers, encountering people who'd rejected all human norms. That fear was real, even if the specific threat was exaggerated. The frontier was full of people and groups operating outside any law or morality settlers recognized. The film made less than $2 million, but found a devoted audience through word of mouth. Critics called it punishing and brutal. Zahler went on to make 2 more ultra-violent films, but Bone Tomahawk remains his most historically interesting because it captures the reality that frontier travel meant potential death from sources you couldn't negotiate with or defend against. Sometimes you encountered something that simply wanted to kill you, and all your guns and courage meant nothing. Number 7. Unforgiven, 1992.
A whipping? That's all they get after what they've done?
Clint Eastwood deconstructed his entire career and made the most realistic depiction of what killing actually meant on the frontier. Unforgiven follows an aging outlaw forced back into violence, and it strips away every romantic notion about gunfighters. William Money is a pig farmer who can barely ride a horse. His hands shake. He gets sick in the rain. When he coals people, it's not quick or clean, and he's traumatized by what he's done. Even decades later, the film's breakthrough moment comes when Money's young partner calls a cowboy. It's not like the movies. The cowboy dies slowly, crying for water, begging not to die. The kid who shot him is traumatized and realizes calling isn't what he thought it would be. Money tells him it's a hell of a thing calling a man, taking away everything he's got and everything he's ever gonna have. That honesty about violence is what sets Unforgiven apart from every Western that came before. Eastwood also shows how myths about the West were created. There's a writer following English Bob, documenting his exploits. But the sheriff reveals that English Bob's famous gunfights were either lies or him shooting unarmed men. The West wasn't about fair fights and honor. It was about who shot first and who controlled the story afterward. Legends were manufactured, and people believed them because they wanted heroes. The film's violence is sudden and brutal. When Money finally snaps and returns to his killer instincts, he walks into a saloon and executes everyone. But Eastwood films it without glory. This is just an old man killing people because that's what he's always been good at. There's no triumph, no sense that justice was served, just more death added to an already enormous body count. Money survives, but the film suggests he's damned for it. What makes Unforgiven historically accurate is how it portrays frontier violence as traumatic and soul-destroying. Real gunslingers weren't heroes. They were men who coaled for money and lived with that guilt if they had any conscience. The frontier attracted violent men, and that violence created cycles of revenge that destroyed communities. Eastwood shows this without judgment, but also without romance. The West was built on killing, and the men who did that culling were broken by it. The film won Best Picture and Best Director, finally giving Eastwood the recognition he deserved. It made over $160 million and is now considered one of the greatest Westerns ever made. Its influence is undeniable. Every serious Western since has followed Unforgiven's lead in showing violence realistically and questioning frontier mythology. Number 6, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, 1971.
Listen, Mr. McCabe, I'm a whore and I know an awful lot about whore.
To get the picture cut and dubbed, and so we were doing it in Vancouver.
Robert Altman made the muddiest, coldest, most unglamorous Western ever filmed, showing a Pacific Northwest mining town as a place of constant rain, exploitation, and corporate violence. McCabe and Mrs. Miller follows a small-time gambler trying to run a brothel and bathhouse while larger interests move in to take over. The film deliberately rejects Western conventions, showing the frontier as cold, muddy, and dominated by capitalism rather than individual heroism. People don't die in dramatic shootouts. They freeze to death or get murdered by corporate enforcers, while everyone else just tries to survive. Warren Beatty plays McCabe as a man who talks big but doesn't really know what he's doing. Julie Christie plays Mrs. Miller, an opium-addicted businesswoman who actually understands how frontier capitalism works. Their partnership is transactional and doomed. The film's visually radical, shot through fog filters to make everything look like faded photographs. The color palette is browns, grays, and muddy greens. Nothing is clean or beautiful. It's what frontier towns actually looked like, hastily built, always wet, everyone covered in dirt. What makes McCabe and Mrs. Miller brutal is how it shows economic exploitation as the real frontier violence. The town is controlled by a mining company that pays starvation wages. Workers have no rights. When McCabe won't sell his business to corporate interests, they send callers. The final shootout happens during a church fire, and nobody even notices McCabe dying in the snow. The town is too busy fighting the fire because the church represents their investment. One man's death means nothing. Altman used overlapping dialogue and naturalistic performances to create a documentary feel. Characters talk over each other. Important plot points happen in the background. The film trusts audiences to pay attention rather than spoon-feeding information. This approach makes the world feel lived in and real. These aren't actors performing scripted scenes. These feel like actual frontier people going about their lives. The film was a commercial failure, making barely $9 million on a $3.5 million budget. Warner Brothers had no idea how to market Altman's anti-Western. Critics were divided. Pauline Kael loved it. Roger Ebert gave it a mixed review initially, then later called it a masterpiece. Audiences expecting a traditional Western with Beatty as a charming hero were confused by what they got instead. What makes the film historically accurate is how it shows the frontier as a place where corporations and capital determined everything. The romantic myth of the West is about individuals creating new lives through hard work. The reality was that banks, mining companies, and railroads controlled everything. Individual effort meant nothing against organized capital. McCabe tries to be independent and dies alone in the snow for it. That's the real frontier story. Number 5. The Homesman, 2014.
You ever know a woman by the name of Mary B. Cuddy?
No, sir.
Tommy Lee Jones directed this film about transporting insane women across the frontier, and it's one of the most honest depictions of what prairie life did to women's mental health. The Homesman follows a frontierswoman who volunteers to transport 3 women driven mad by prairie hardship back to Iowa, where they can receive care. The film shows that the frontier didn't just call bodies, it destroyed minds, and women bore the brunt of that psychological toll. Hilary Swank plays Mary B. Cuddy, a capable frontierswoman who's too old and plain to find a husband. The isolation is driving her toward her own breakdown. Jones plays a claim jumper she rescues from hanging in exchange for his help with the journey. The 3 insane women represent different ways prairie life destroys mental health. One lost 3 children to diphtheria. Another was beaten by her husband. The third just couldn't handle the isolation and privation. All of them have completely disconnected from reality. What makes The Homesman brutal is how it shows the casual cruelty of frontier life, particularly toward women. Mary B. proposes marriage to several men and is rejected by all of them, despite being property owner and capable. Women had value only for reproduction and labor. When they broke down mentally, they became burdens to be shipped back east. The 3 insane women are treated like livestock, tied up when they become unmanageable, dragged along when they refuse to move. The film also shows frontier violence as random and pointless. They encounter a hotel run by a deranged man who feeds travelers poisoned food. Native Americans attack not for revenge or territory, but because they can. Jones's character is hanged by claim jumpers for no reason except entertainment. None of this violence serves narrative purpose. It just happens, which is how frontier violence actually was: random, frequent, and often meaningless. The film's most devastating moment comes when Mary B., after everything she's endured, culls herself. Jones's character had dismissed and humiliated her, and she realizes she'll never have the life she wanted. Her suicide is matter-of-fact and crushing. The film doesn't dwell on it. The journey simply continues with Jones taking over, and you realize Mary B.'s entire existence was forgotten within hours. That casual erasure of women's contributions is historically accurate and heartbreaking. The film made barely $3 million, despite Jones's involvement and strong reviews. Audiences found it too depressing. The Homesman doesn't offer hope or redemption. It shows the frontier as a place that broke people, especially women, and then forgot about them. The insane women are delivered to Iowa, and we're told they'll spend the rest of their lives in asylums. Their frontier experience destroyed them permanently, and there's no recovery. That honesty about mental health and gender on the frontier makes The Homesman essential despite its commercial failure. Number 4, Dead Man, 1995.
People at Dickinson's Metalworks.
In all forms, all genres of film, but Western is not one of my...
Jim Jarmusch made a hallucinatory Western about a man dying slowly from a gunshot wound, and it's the most spiritually accurate depiction of what death looked like on the frontier. Dead Man follows William Blake, an accountant who travels west for a job that doesn't exist, accidentally culls a man and spends the rest of the film slowly dying from a bullet lodged near his heart. He's guided by a Native American named Nobody, who believes Blake is the reincarnation of the poet William Blake and is helping him complete his journey to the spirit world. Johnny Depp plays Blake as increasingly disconnected from reality as infection and blood loss take their toll. The film is shot in stark black and white, and it moves like a dream or fever vision. Blake calls several men pursuing him, but he's not a gunfighter. He's just a dying man who keeps pulling the trigger. The bodies pile up, and Blake becomes a wanted outlaw despite having no idea what's happening. His transformation from timid clerk to legendary killer happens entirely by accident and misunderstanding. What makes Dead Man brutal is how it shows death as a long, delirious process. Blake doesn't die in a dramatic shootout. He dies slowly over days or weeks, gradually losing himself. Nobody performs rituals and tells Blake he's transitioning to the spirit world, but we're not sure if that's spiritual truth or just Blake's dying brain, making patterns from chaos. The ambiguity is intentional. Garmush is showing how frontier death often meant dying alone, confused, with your identity dissolving. The film also depicts frontier racism and exploitation with unflinching honesty. Nobody is educated and speaks multiple languages, but white settlers treat him as a savage. He was kidnapped as a child, taken to England, educated, then brought back and rejected by both cultures. His existence is proof that the frontier destroyed indigenous identity systematically. Blake's journey west is also a journey through American violence, each town more corrupt and dangerous than the last. Jarmusch cast musicians and character actors in small roles, including Iggy Pop, Robert Mitchum in his final performance, and Gabriel Byrne. Neil Young composed the score, performing it solo on electric guitar while watching the film. The music is dissonant and haunting, emphasizing the film's dreamlike quality. Nothing feels quite real, which is appropriate for a film about a man dying and no longer able to distinguish reality from hallucination. The film divided critics and confused audiences, making only $1 million domestically. Miramax had no idea how to market an art film western, but Dead Man has grown in reputation, with critics now recognizing it as one of the most unique westerns ever made. Its depiction of death as a long, confusing journey is historically accurate. Most frontier deaths weren't quick. They were slow processes of infection, blood loss, or disease, with the dying person often delirious and alone. Number 3. The Proposition, 2005.
I suppose I told you there was a way to save your little brother Mikey from the noose.
John Hillcoat directed this Australian western that shows colonial frontier brutality without any romanticizing. The Proposition is set in 1880 Queensland, where British colonials are trying to civilize the outback through violence and intimidation. A lawman captures 2 brothers from an outlaw gang and makes a proposition. Find and call your older brother, or watch your younger brother hang. The film that follows is one of the most violent, morally complicated westerns ever made, showing the frontier as a place where civilization and savagery are indistinguishable. Guy Pearce plays Charlie Burns, the middle brother given an impossible choice. Ray Winstone plays Captain Stanley, the lawman who thinks he's civilizing the wilderness, but is actually just perpetuating cycles of violence. The film shows both men as trapped by systems they can't escape. Stanley wants to build a civilized society, but has to use savage methods. Charlie wants to protect his brothers, but that means culling. Nobody wins. Everyone is corrupted by the brutality they were forced to participate in. What makes the Proposition brutal is how it shows colonial violence as systematic and deliberate. The British aren't bringing civilization. They're imposing their will through hanging, whipping, and intimidation. There's a scene where Stanley is forced to publicly flog Charlie's younger brother as Christmas punishment. The flogging runs over 5 minutes and is genuinely difficult to watch. Flesh tears, blood sprays, the brother is permanently damaged. And Stanley has to watch his wife's horror, knowing he's destroying his own humanity to maintain order. The film also shows violence against Aboriginals as casual and frequent. A group of bounty hunters casually discuss calling Aboriginal children. An Aboriginal character is tortured for information. These atrocities aren't presented as exceptional. They're shown as normal, accepted parts of colonial expansion. Hillcoat doesn't lecture or moralize. He simply shows what happened and trusts audiences to recognize the horror. Nick Cave wrote the screenplay and composed the score, and his influence is everywhere. The dialogue is harsh and poetic. The music is mournful and oppressive. The landscape is shot as beautiful and hostile simultaneously, with Warren Ellis's cinematography capturing the outback's harsh beauty. The film was shot in remote Australian locations, and the cast endured extreme heat and difficult conditions that show in every frame. The film made barely $2 million worldwide and received mixed reviews. Critics praised its unflinching approach, but audiences found it too brutal and too hopeless. There's no redemption in the proposition, no sense that any of this violence accomplished anything. The colonial project destroyed everyone it touched, settlers and indigenous people alike. That honesty about colonialism makes the proposition one of the most important westerns of the 21st century. Number 2, The Nightingale, 2019.
I wanted to come tell you we're all right. We're all right.
Jennifer Kent made the most confrontational frontier film ever, showing colonial Tasmania as a place of systematic rape, murder, and genocide. The Nightingale follows an Irish convict woman seeking revenge against British soldiers who murdered her family after raping her repeatedly. The violence is explicit and prolonged, designed to make audiences understand that this wasn't aberrant behavior. This was colonial policy, the intentional use of sexual violence as a weapon of control, and the systematic elimination of indigenous populations. The film opens with a repeat scene that runs several minutes. Kent doesn't cut away or soften anything. She forces viewers to witness the assault in real time, and it's unbearable. Later, soldiers murder the woman's husband and infant daughter while she watches. That scene caused mass walkouts at the Venice Film Festival. People couldn't handle it. Kent was accused of exploiting trauma, but she defended her choices by saying, "This actually happened constantly," and pretending otherwise erases the experiences of countless victims. Aisling Franciosi plays Claire, the convict seeking revenge. Sam Claflin plays Lieutenant Hawkins, the officer who destroyed her life. And he's terrifyingly believable as a man who sees violence against the powerless as his right. Baikali Ganambar plays Billy, an Aboriginal tracker helping Claire while dealing with his own trauma. The film shows parallel atrocities against Aboriginal people. British soldiers rape Aboriginal women with impunity. They massacre families. They treat Indigenous people as subhuman. What makes The Nightingale historically accurate is Kent's refusal to sanitize anything. Every assault is shown in detail. Every murder is witnessed completely. The film runs over 2 hours of sustained brutality with brief moments of respite. This wasn't exceptional violence. This was standard operating procedure for British colonization. The British colonized Tasmania through systematic rape and genocide, and Kent forces viewers to confront that reality without comfortable distance. The film also shows how colonial systems protected perpetrators. Hawkins commits multiple murders and rapes, and he faces no consequences because his victims are convicts and Aboriginal people whose lives have no legal value. Claire seeks justice through official channels and is laughed at. The only recourse is revenge, but even that provides no satisfaction. Culling Hawkins doesn't bring her family back or heal her trauma. It just adds more death to an already enormous pile. The film made less than $2 million worldwide, despite strong reviews. Audiences didn't want to endure this much documented trauma, even when historically accurate and artistically justified. But Kent achieved what she intended. She made a film about colonial violence that doesn't allow comfortable distance or easy moralizing. The frontier wasn't adventure or opportunity. For women and Indigenous people, it was a nightmare of sexual violence and genocide that most Westerns pretend didn't. Eline's happen. Number 1, The Assassination of Jesse James by The Coward, Robert Ford, 2007. Andrew Dominic created the most meticulously researched and brutally honest Western ever made, showing the late frontier as a miserable place populated by damaged men with no future. The Assassination of Jesse James follows the final months of Jesse's life and the disintegration of his gang. Everything in the film, the clothing, guns, locations, language, feels ripped from the 1880s. And that authenticity reveals the frontier as cold, muddy, and psychologically crushing. A place where legends were just traumatized men waiting to die. Brad Pitt plays Jesse as paranoid, cruel, and slowly losing his mind. This isn't the romantic outlaw of dime novels. This is a man damaged by years of guerrilla warfare, who's turned violence into his only mode of relating to others. Casey Affleck plays Robert Ford, the weak, needy young man who idolizes Jesse and then calls him for reward money and fame. The film shows their relationship as psychologically abusive, with Jesse alternating between mentorship and cruelty, while Robert oscillates between worship and resentment. What makes this film the most historically accurate Western is the obsessive attention to detail. Ron Hansen wrote the source novel after extensive research, and he was on set consulting. The dialogue is based on documented quotes. The locations match historical photographs. The guns are period correct. Even the weather matches recorded conditions. Dominic and cinematographer Roger Deakins shot using natural light whenever possible, giving everything a documentary quality that makes the 1880s feel tangible and real. The film also shows frontier life as psychologically devastating. Jesse suffers from what we'd now call PTSD and depression. His gang members are alcoholics and addicts self-medicating trauma. Robert Ford is mentally unstable, probably suffering from personality disorders that go undiagnosed and untreated. The frontier had no mental health infrastructure, so damaged men just spiraled until they decalled themselves or someone else. The film shows this without diagnosis or explanation, trusting audiences to recognize the symptoms. The violence in the film is quick and brutal. When people get shot, they don't die dramatically. They just stop working and fall down. There's no glory in it, no excitement, just the sudden transformation from living person to corpse. The assassination itself is a matter of fact. Jesse is adjusting a picture on the wall when Robert shoots him in the back of the head. He falls, blood pools, and that's it. The legend dies on a dirty floor while dust motes float in sunlight. The film bombed spectacularly, making only $15 million on a $30 million budget. The studio cut the film and barely promoted it. Critics loved it, but audiences found it too slow and depressing. At 260 minutes in Dominic's preferred cut, 160 in the theatrical version, it requires patience. But that deliberate pacing is essential to showing frontier life's grinding misery. Days were long and boring, punctuated by brief moments of terror. What makes The Assassination of Jesse James the most brutally honest Western is its refusal to lie about anything. The West wasn't romantic. Outlaws weren't heroes. Violence wasn't exciting. And legends were just stories told about miserable men who died young and were immediately forgotten by everyone, except the people trying to profit from their names. That complete rejection of frontier mythology makes this the definitive statement on what the West actually was. The real frontier cowed most people who tried to settle it. Disease, starvation, mental illness, exposure, violence, all of it combined to make the West one of the deadliest places on Earth. These 10 Westerns refuse to lie about that reality, showing the frontier as it actually was rather than how mythology pretends.